The March evening felt colder than it should have, and when police and paramedics stepped inside the quiet rental home, that cold was matched only by the unsettling stillness surrounding them. The 911 call had come in frantic and desperate, a voice begging for help, insisting something was terribly wrong in the basement. Inside the house, nothing seemed immediately out of place, but a faint chemical smell lingered in the air. The basement door hung slightly ajar, as if someone had rushed through it moments before. When first responders descended the steps, they were met with a sight so chaotic and haunting that it would anchor one of the most debated criminal cases the state had ever seen. On the basement floor sat Caroline Tyler, clutching the lifeless body of her wife, Anna Marie Cotran. Both were smeared with blood, both streaked with paint, and around them, spilled paint pooled across the concrete in large unanswered patches, creating a surreal and disturbing scene. Caroline cried uncontrollably, rocking back and forth as she whispered broken phrases no one around her could fully understand. At first glance, responders wondered if this was a tragic accident, a fall, a stumble, something horribly unfortunate. But the more investigators looked, the more the basement told a different story, one layered in contradictions, inconsistencies, and the unmistakable signs of staged chaos. That March night would become the beginning of a mystery that would stretch on for more than a decade. To understand how everything reached this breaking point, investigators began rewinding through the lives of Caroline and Anna, two women whose relationship began with deep affection but slowly unraveled under the pressures of financial turmoil, emotional conflict, and years of mistrust. Caroline, born in 1965 in Massachusetts, grew up quiet, reserved, and often private to a fault. She built a career as an emergency medical technician and later joined the local fire department, following a path built around service and commitment. She was responsible, methodical, and often kept her struggles to herself. In contrast, Anna Marie Cochran, born in 1972, had a magnetic personality, filled with energy, humor, and a boldness that drew people in. She came out as a teenager, built a career as a paramedic, and lived her life in full color. When Caroline and Anna met in 2002, it felt like the meeting of opposites that somehow clicked, filling gaps in each other's personalities. They married in 2005, among the early same-sex couples to do so legally in Mass. And 2 years later, they adopted a newborn baby girl named Brianna. For a brief time, their life looked complete, but cracks began appearing early on. Financial strain became a constant shadow over their marriage. Anna struggled with impulsive spending and accrued over $20,000 in credit card debt. At one point, she opened a credit card in Caroline's name, sparking explosive arguments and creating emotional wounds that were never fully resolved. In 2008, Anna filed a restraining order, accusing Caroline of physical abuse. Caroline denied the allegations, and although Anna later withdrew the charges, the trust between them never fully recovered. By 2009, their tension escalated into a volatile cycle of arguments, accusations, and failed attempts to hold the family together. Both sought restraining orders. Both claimed they felt unsafe. The judge overseeing their case warned that if they couldn't improve their communication, their daughter might be removed from their custody. And then came the outside relationships. Caroline formed a close friendship with a man named Mike, while Anna developed a complicated connection with a married co-worker named Mark. A relationship that Anna used not only for emotional support, but also to secure credit cards and financial favors that later resulted in thousands of dollars in debt. By late March 2010, their marriage was barely holding together. The night before Anna's death, the couple argued over Caroline inviting a male friend over while Anna was working her shift. Their messages were heated, emotional, and full of threats to leave. But what happened the next day would be far more devastating than any argument that had come before. According to Caroline's initial statement to police, the morning of March 29th began normally. Anna returned home around 8:30 after finishing a night shift. They ate breakfast together, talked calmly, and Anna asked Caroline to take Brianna out for the afternoon so she could sleep. Caroline said she left around 3 in the afternoon, running errands in nearby towns before eventually stopping at a mall around 5. She texted Anna repeatedly, but Anna never responded. By 7, worried and uneasy, Caroline returned home. What she found led to the frantic knock on her neighbor's door. Brianna, in her arms, pleading for someone to call 911. But investigators quickly began noticing details that contradicted Caroline's account. Rigor mortis had already set in when responders arrived, suggesting Anna had been dead for several hours, long before Caroline claimed to have left the house. Blood was found in multiple locations, including beneath items that should not have been moved. Spilled paint appeared to have been poured deliberately in multiple stages, and the specialty sealing paint on Anna's body looked freshly applied when police arrived, still showing a pink tint that would have faded within an hour. Investigators also discovered peculiar damage to the frame of the side door that resembled staging rather than a forced entry. Even more concerning, security footage contradicted parts of Caroline's timeline, failing to place her at certain locations during the time she claimed to be out. Then came the discovery of a red bag and a laundry basket seen in Caroline's vehicle during her errands, but missing later. When police searched a nearby dumpster, they found rags with what appeared to be blood, though the degradation of the sample made it impossible to confirm whether the blood belonged to Anna, while alternative suspects were considered, including Anna's co-worker Mark, who initially lied about his whereabouts. All evidence eventually circled back to Caroline. After more than a year of investigation, Caroline was arrested in 2011, becoming the first woman in Massachusetts history charged with first-degree murder of a spouse. Her trials became a marathon of courtroom battles. The first trial in 2013 ended in a hung jury. So did the second in 2014. In 2016, the third trial allowed the jury to consider a lesser charge of manslaughter. This time, prosecutors presented paint analysis testimony suggesting the paint on Anna's body was still fresh when responders arrived, reinforcing their argument that the scene had been staged shortly before the 911 call. The prosecution described a marriage strained to its breaking point by years of financial conflict, jealousy, and emotional instability. They argued that Caroline killed Anna in a moment of rage, pushed her down the basement stairs, strangled her, and spent hours attempting to clean and rearrange the scene. They emphasized the timeline, the forensic inconsistencies, the missing items, and the evidence of cleanup efforts. After deliberations, the jury convicted Caroline of first-degree murder. She was sentenced to life without parole, but the case was far from over. In 2021, the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court overturned her conviction, ruling that the paint expert's testimony should never have been admitted and likely influenced the jury unfairly. Caroline was released on bail after spending 7 years in prison. A fourth trial was scheduled for 2023. During the 2023 proceedings, both sides fought as fiercely as they had years earlier. Prosecutors maintained that Caroline had killed her wife and tried to hide it. The defense argued flawed evidence, alternative suspects, and an unreliable investigation. Finally, the jury reached a different conclusion. They found Caroline guilty of involuntary manslaughter, not murder. When the verdict was read, the courtroom fell into stunned silence. Caroline wept. Anna's family expressed relief. But the most emotional moment came during sentencing, when Brianna, now 16, addressed the court. She described growing up without her mother, rebuilding her life after Caroline's release in 2021, excelling in school, joining sports teams, and finally feeling whole again. With tears streaming down her face, she pleaded for mercy, explaining that Caroline was the only parent she truly had and that losing her again would fracture her world a second time. After reviewing letters from supporters and hearing the arguments, the judge sentenced Caroline to 12 to 14 years in prison, with credit for the 7 she had already served. She returned to correctional custody, where she continues to serve her sentence today. The story of Caroline, Tyler, and Anna Marie Cochran remains one of the most complex, emotionally layered cases in recent memory. It is a story of love collapsing under years of pressure, a story of financial strain, domestic turmoil, unresolved conflict, and fatal choices. It is a case that has inspired documentaries and debate, a reminder of how relationships, when pushed to the edge, can unravel into tragedy and leave behind a lifetime of unanswered questions.